listening to the Marketing and Yoga Pants podcast, a podcast in sisterhood for female entrepreneurs that serves up savvy, actionable marketing advice and interviews with creative business owners who are in the trenches, building their businesses as we speak. The Marketing and Yoga Pants community is for you, the girl on her couch, in her yoga pants, top knot tight, hunched over her MacBook, trying her hardest to get the word out about her business. So in the name of supporting each other while supporting ourselves, bringing community, sound marketing advice, coffee, chocolate, and wine together for you, yoga pants wearing business owner, in a world where followers mean nothing, but paying customers mean the world, join us on this week's podcast episode and in our private Facebook group where you'll meet your soul sisters and build your business in yoga pants. Welcome back to another episode of the Marketing and Yoga Pants podcast. I'm Brit and I'm here today with Jordan Gill, operations consultant and host of the System Saved Me podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today, Jordan.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited. We're going to get into it.
We are. Just from before we hit record, I know we're going to get into it today. This is going to be awesome. So Jordan and I first met back in January, like a one-day mastermind call, which was intense, curated by kick-ass masterminds. I had known about Jordan even back when I was in my corporate job. I think you were a part of some sort of online summit that I don't know back in 2016. And I knew of Jordan and I looked up to her like, yes, like she is kicking butt. I really like her. And then we were curated into this one-day mastermind and I saw your name on the list. I'm like, wait, what? Is that the Jordan that I think we're talking about here? And so like, it was just so cool. I was like so pumped to be on that call. And then you rocked my world when you told me that you really don't like marketing, right? Everyone that's listened has known that happened to me. And this is the girl that told me that. Man, I have to say right now, I'm so grateful that our paths crossed because I really don't know what I would have done without that little nugget that you gave me. And your openness to say like, no, I'm not cool with marketing. So with all that said, I'm super pumped to get to chat with Jordan today, get some insight into her business, her changing business, her industry, her marketing strategy, and really what makes it all tick. So Jordan, you ready to jump in?
I am. Let's get down to business.
All right, let's do this. Okay, so first of all, tell the listeners how you earn your living right now.
Totally. So how I earn my living is by essentially operations intensives. So, and I have a few 90-day type packages as well, but I tend to work with business owners who are between like 250K and maybe 1 to 2 million yearly revenue. And I help them put processes and systems into place because once you make, and I'll explain some of the systems I help with, but the main struggle between 6 figures and 7 figures is systems. And most people don't want to hear that, but it is true. And so that tends to be where my people come from and have the biggest pain point because they've been able to make a certain amount of income, but it was messy, it was stressful, and they were hustling and doing the most. Now they're wanting some of that time back. So that's who I was helping specifically in these intensives. Generally, I work with online service-based business owners. So we would create an entire client onboarding and management system for them that was as automated and systematized as possible so that all they had to do was show up for their clients and show up for sales calls. So that was really fun for me. And those packages were 4-hour intensives with about a 2-month Slack support, I guess, add-on on the back end. And I'm super up with my numbers. So it was $3,000 for those 4 hours with me, plus the 2 months. And then I had a few other packages that I definitely didn't talk to anybody about. But if people came to me with these issues of needing to create an operational manual. So if you went into corporate, you might have heard the term SOPs, but if you haven't, they're standard operating procedures. And most people hate creating them. I love creating them, specifically while watching anything on Hulu. And I would create actual operations manuals, which meant what are all of the things that are being done in your business? How can we get them out of your brain and into step-by-step tutorials so that other people can start taking things off your plate? And that package was about $6,000 across a 90-day period. And then I had other packages that had to do with like content development and course structure stuff. And that was around a $15K package.
Perfect. Okay. Those are big clients. They're premium level clients. Those are not small numbers to be bringing in, which is awesome. This is part of why I'm like, yes, Jordan knows what she's doing here. Tell us how you got to do this with your life. What's the backstory here?
Totally. So funny enough, and this is going to come around full circle, I didn't realize it was full circle until I started looking back. But actually, my first initial taste of the online world was managing someone's guest outreach and podcasting process. It was for this gal. I remember reaching out to people like Melissa Casera and a couple other people who now are really, really big deals. They were definitely big deals even back then. I basically just got guests on this podcast. And then I did that for a little bit. And I was actually, I guess, technically unemployed at the time, but I was getting my master's. And I started following a woman online who I really admired how she built her business. She was an online entrepreneur and I was like, this is interesting. So I started following her. She had a course on Creative Live. And about 9 months later, I remember going to bed one night and saying, I'm going to work for this woman. I'm not even joking. You know, I am not super woo or anything. The most woo I am is like a candle I have. But literally the next day I had in my inbox, because I was on her email list, a job description that she had emailed out to her entire list saying, I'm looking for this person. And I kid you not, the description was me. Like, it was like, I need Jordan. Like, I just saw it written all over the post and I was like, oh my gosh, she doesn't even know, but like, I'm her person. So I did the application, all of that. And actually how I got the job was kind of funny too. It was a head of content position. So I have a background in journalism. It was to help her write her courses. So basically be like the songwriter to her Beyonce. And so after I had applied, I usually, you know, in real world, usually like send a thank you card or try and figure out some way to stand out. And she was speaking at Social Media Marketing World forever ago. I saw where she was staying at because she Facebook Lived it. And I actually sent her a dozen cupcakes because I'm a creep and I thought she has a sweet tooth. So I picked a bunch of cupcakes from Sprinkles Cupcakes and had them delivered to her hotel. I knew she was there with her husband and said, hey, thank you so much for the opportunity even to apply. I got you 2 of each flavor, so you don't have to share with your husband. Hope you're going to have an awesome time at Social Media Marketing World. Jordan. Her husband said, like, we were going to hire you. We called you Cupcake Girl. Like, it was like, we're going to hire Cupcake Girl at the end because I know how much I wanted that position. And I spent $80 some odd on cupcakes when I was unemployed and getting my master's, and I made it work. And so then I worked for that woman for about 2 years and really learned a lot. My position switched from content development to this kind of what I'm doing now is like operations and process stuff. And basically I went into the different departments of her business, created a process, and I hired and trained then a full-time employee to take my spot. So I did that for about a year of the 2 years I was there. To be quite honest, I had a moment, was just kind of like sitting there, and for me, God told me, you need to quit. There wasn't like a reason. There wasn't a blowout. There wasn't anything. I thought I would be in this position for a long time. And I was like, interesting. So I quit with no plan, no business, no nothing. It was super scary. And I had given 6 weeks notice because we were on the edge of a launch. Within those 6 weeks, I solidified $12,000 for my first month of business, not having anything except an email address, a bank account, and an LLC. I hit the ground running, and I have been doing operations consulting in a variety of capacities for about 2 years now.
Oh man, I love it. I love listening to stories like this. Let you tell me all the little details. There are a couple of things that I want to pull out of this, and I think this is why I've always been attracted to how you do your own business and also how you approach operations, because operations can feel really corporate-y and really technical and not fun and not creative. You just gave us a beautiful picture into how that's not at all how you do operations. You have a very unique blend of a really logical, logistical ability and this such a fun way to approach your operations from a surprise and delight experience that you want to provide to the people that you're creating the operations for. I love that blend from my perspective. I think that's the superpower here. And I'm not natural at coming up with ways to surprise and delight people. It's just, I'm creative, but I just don't, that doesn't come to me very much. So when I see how you surprise and delight people, I'm just like, dude, Jordan is the coolest. Like, I just love how you do that. It's just so much fun. Has that been something that has always been innate within you? Have you learned that over time? Like, where does that come from?
That is super interesting. I think it has just kind of been a native thing for me because whenever similar to, how I stood out in that job application process of sending cupcakes, I like to find ways to stand out and surprise people because I found that, and you know this, in a lot of people's marketing and a lot of people's outreach, even in a lot of people's copy and messaging on their website, it is like wah, 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 like Charlie Brown. And probably one of the reasons I had a distaste for marketing previously. So I think that I always just looked for a lot of times, I guess, the blue ocean. I don't know if you are familiar with that concept or that book, but like, what is everybody else doing? And how can I legit just do the opposite of that? So again, what you brought up about operations in the systems world, most people who do operations have a really gross corporate website and the colors are super whatever. Like the language they use, it's like, I'm bored. Like there was a landing page that I saw the other day and I had to post about it because I was just like, this is terrible. And one of the bullet points was like, learn the history of operations manuals. And I was like, I don't even want to know the history of operations manuals and I create them, right? So I was like, guys, we've got to do better. I think with surprise and delight, what I just enjoy about surprise is that there's something, and I don't have the psychological behind this at all, but there's something about just when somebody either anticipates a need that you have or like just wants to put a smile on your face. I think that, again, whether it's you sending a gift or whether it's I send a lot of, for outreach, I do a lot of video messages instead of emails. So I, again, just like to do things differently and go the extra mile because I'm not a big fan of like the spray and pray method where you just like spam 1,000 people and maybe 5 people will pick it up. I would much rather be very targeted in my marketing and my outreach to have 20 really quality, amazing people and maybe I get 10 of them. And it's a higher conversion rate because I'm very specific and I do my due diligence and research beforehand. So I can do those surprise and delight things because I know who I'm talking to versus, again, just trying to get this big audience because that's like the cool thing to do.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. I like that insight. Okay. So now I have to open the floor because you gave us the rundown of how you make your money right now and how you've come to this point in your career. And before we hit record, you said, okay, everything's kind of changing. So, and it just changed yesterday. At the time of this interview going live, it all just went crazy in Jordan Gill's brand yesterday. So can you tell us what's going on? What is going on with your business?
Oh gosh, what isn't going on? It seems like that list. But my business brand previously was the Colada Group, spelled with a K, and it was inspired by pina coladas because, again, from a marketing perspective, the clients that I was working with, they would say over and over again, I would ask them, why do you want systems? They would say, I want to be able to go to the beach, sip on a pina colada and not have my business blow up. And that was what all of them said. So the pina colada was a symbol to them of being able to take a break from their business and it felt good. Like they didn't have to rush off to their laptop. People all have their laptops on the beach and stuff, which is great. I definitely am a bit of a workaholic, so I get it. But I want you to be able to shut your laptop if you want to, right? So having the power to do that is really huge. The Colada Group was where I did all of my operations consulting and where my brand was for a year and a half. Technically, my first business name was disgusting. It was Personalized Procedures. You can throw the tomatoes at me now. So gross. And I'm surprised that I got clients. I don't even know how it happened. But now I'm doing some shifts. And I have this thing about 2 years. And maybe you've picked up on it because I talked about working for the online entrepreneur for 2 years. I've been an operations consultant for about 2 years. I get this itch in 2 years where I'm just like, I need to do something different. So what happened was I'm familiar with human design. I don't know if you've looked into it, Brit, or not. Have you delved into human design at all?
I mean, I get the concept. I can't say that I've really researched or I haven't dug into it yet.
Gotcha. Yeah, totally. So I have a few friends who are really big into it. And so they were explaining to me sort of just like how I operate energetically and how I can use that to my advantage in life and in business and all that stuff. Very similar to Strength Finders, or I know you're a big Myers-Briggs person, just understanding like, how are you naturally operating? What are your strengths and weaknesses? And being able to play to those. I'm big about like, let's just figure out your advantages and stick to them. So for my human design, I don't know all the things, so I can't really go super deep on them. But for my type of human design, it was you have to be invited into whatever you are moving forward in. So like which is interesting because I kind of already knew that. I didn't know those words per se, but basically it means like if I come up with an idea, but no one's invited me to do it, saying, Jordan, like, do you have this? Or Jordan, like, have you started this or whatever else? Then I shouldn't probably start it. Which again, to most people who are ideas people, that sounds like you're getting choked and you want to like cry. However, for me, that's super exciting because I'm not an ideas person. I've known that for a very long time. I'm like, that's not where my jam is. And so to hear that I need to get invited into something is cool for me because I'm like, great. So basically I took 2 weeks in June, about mid-June, and basically just started collecting the invitations that I was getting, being very observant of just what people were doing when they were following me, what they were asking for, all of that sort of stuff. And invitations come in a variety of ways. And this shift that I'm going into, actually, one of the invitations came from the customer support of my podcast hosting platform. So random. He had asked me if I ran a podcast management agency. And it was really random for him to ask me that. But I had this weird inkling of saying yes to that. Why? I don't know. But I said yes. And so he was explaining to me, what cool features and stuff that my hosting platform does for management agencies. I'm sitting there like, why would I say yes to this? Like, this seems weird. And then I kind of went back and reviewed some of my invitations, and a lot of the invitations were surrounded around podcast management. And I was like, this is weird. So I started to kind of stew on the idea because I think a lot of us can feel weird about being an expert in a space that like Pat Flynn is clearly an expert on podcasting. John Lee Dumas is clearly an expert on podcasting. I just feel like I own a podcast. Like I just have one and I just do it. Like I don't consider myself an expert per se. However, other people were seeing me as that. So I was like, okay, let me actually look into this. And so as of yesterday, August 1st, I launched Pimp Your Podcast, which is a podcast management agency that helps with the editing, that helps more heavily on like the promotional side of your podcast. So making sure that you are expanding your reach as much as possible through social, through collaborations, through other sorts of things that we come up with. And I'm really excited about it. And we launched a podcast as well at the same time called the Pimp Your Podcast Show, where I interview other podcasters about why they started their podcast, what their podcast has allowed for them to do, what their team makeup is. I would have never, again, maybe, 4 weeks ago, if you had told me I was going to run a podcast management agency, I'd been like, what are you even talking about? But when you feel that flow and inspiration, it is insane how quickly I've gotten stuff up for this thing. I did a website in like 4 hours. It's like actually pretty decent. And I have I went to Podcast Movement, I guess a couple weeks ago at this point, and I had t-shirts made for it. I had these like car air fresheners made for it. I already had a couple clients before I even launched this podcast yesterday. And it's like, what is even happening? Like my business is building and I don't even have really a grasp on things. My client side of things is super dope and I've been massaging it for a really long time, but this is like a big shift for me. So the Colada Group is no more. I'm shifting things on the system side to go under my podcast branding of Systems Saved Me. But the project that I'm currently in and focusing on is the Pimp Your Podcast Management Agency.
Dang, girl. I mean, I see it. And the biggest thing that I'm taking away from this, and this has been a theme for solid 45 days so far. For me, I think it keeps coming up. I mean, I'm posting about it a lot because it keeps coming up in my conversations with people, in conversations with clients, and just anybody, that you have the option to let it be easy. Like, you can make it hard. You can continue making anything hard. You can complicate the crap out of everything. And you have the option to let things be easy. And it feels like that's what you did. Like, you just let it be. And I dig that. I dig that so hard. I love that. Okay, so this is a pretty massive shift to the point where you're saying the Colada Group is no more. Talking systems under the Systems Saved Me brand and starting this agency, you'll provide services. I would love to know, and I'm kind of facing this soon in my own, I don't know, not even business, but just life. My name's going to change. And that feels kind of funny because my name is part of my brand. I'm Brit Colo, and I'm not going to be Brit Colo anymore. So it's kind of like weird. Like, what do I do there? And I've heard other people, Tara Gentile, now Tara McMullen, just kind of put that out into the world too. Like, what do you do when your name changes? And this is how I look at it. It's not the same thing, but it feels similar. Can you talk into that situation where you have an opportunity to shift and essentially take on, basically open yourself up to a potentially new identity, and just some thoughts around that? Like, what's been your experience, and do you have any wisdom to offer us, that those of us that are also looking at that potential pivot, shift, change?
Yeah, I think for me and my life experiences, I moved around a lot growing up. I've moved, I think, 11 times total in my life. And so stability or deep roots is not something that I have an understanding or experience around. And so, again, I've mentioned my business started with personalized procedures, and then I changed it to the Colada Group, and now that's no more, and I'm changing it to this. And I think a lot of people who have lived in the same house since they were born till 18, and they've lived in the same town their whole life, or even if you've maybe only moved once, that can seem like a lot of change, and that can seem impossible. So from an outside perspective, it's not that difficult, in the sense that if I've been on a bunch of podcasts as the Colada Group, and I have a lot of things happening. However, again, letting it be easy and saying, from a website perspective, if anything is coming to the Colada Group website, I literally just am creating a redirect page that says, hey, totally get it. We were the Colada Group. You aren't wrong. However, we are shifting now to Systems Save Me. Click here if you want to see our new shenanigans that we have happening. And it really can be that easy. The biggest shift is definitely my Google Drive right now, my inbox. So again, making it so that all of these people who I've met and all this stuff are used to emailing me at this website, and now having to shift that to a new inbox, I guess technically, that is really where the long-term goals are and all of that stuff. And I love that Tara Gentile changed her name, because I think that so many people fear doing that. And I get that, right? I totally know you as Brit Colo, and it will be an adjustment when or if you change your name. However, it doesn't have to be the big thing, right? Like, similar to what you said before, just letting it be easy. Like, one, also, you changing your name, that happens, right? Whenever anybody gets married, generally speaking, for the most part, the woman changes her name. And so I have a whole bunch of people on my phone, funny enough, where I haven't changed their name to their married name, but their married name is on their Facebook or their Instagram. And I'm like, oh yeah, same person, probably need to change that. And I think that pivots are going to happen in your business. That's part of being an entrepreneur. And the more adaptable you can be, the better off it is. And I think that, especially for you, branding under your name. And I mean, you have the Marketing and Yoga Pants podcast, you have the Jam Marketing Group, you have these other things that actually could hold you up if you wanted to just say, instead of being Brit Colo and having more of the personal name attached, you could, again, I've seen people who then get married and they actually just move under whatever their content is under and stuff like that. So that can kind of be an easier transition, which is kind of what I'm doing with the Colada Group and System Saved Me. So yeah, and I think also with any sort of change, and because I did a deep dive with you, Brit, I was able to look at these new invitations and look at these new opportunities and look at, okay, do these still fit under my best marketing strategies? Like, I'm not just trying to jump ship for like funsies. Like, I want it to still be alignment with what I'm doing. When we did the deep dive, I had, affiliates and ambassador programs, podcasting and speaking, ding, 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 looking at the detailed stuff and bringing order to people so that they had the freedom of time. That also is part of, the podcast management group. And then really looking at how to bring more of the behind the scenes, like who I am, into what it is I'm doing. The System Save Me side of the operations business is doing that because I'm creating workflows that I have used for clients or that I've used for myself and bringing them to the masses, which people have been asking for the entire 2 years. And I was like, no. But then again, sometimes it's timing of things, and it's okay for you to say no at one point in your life and then say yes the next part of your life, and vice versa as well.
Yeah. Again, my takeaway is like, it's not as big as you think it is, right? It's like with a name change or a business shift or a pivot or something, it feels big to us because our identity, whether it's not like we try to do this, I don't know that it's possible to break these two things away, but our identity is somehow wrapped up into either that name or that business or that whatever. And so when you talk about shifting it, it feels like a big thing for us. But at the end of the day, it really is an easy shift for the audience. It's not as big of a deal as I think we put pressure on. At least that's kind of my realization as you walk through that. It's like, yeah, no big deal. Like it's all good. I mean, it's not. We make it harder than it needs to be. So thank you for that little permission slip you just gave me. That was helpful. And I think you probably just gave that to a bunch of people as well. So that was awesome. All right. So you kind of mentioned it. You are no longer doing the premium services under the Colada Group, and now you're packaging up your systems that you've figured out and obviously have a true knack for, and you're going to be providing them under the System Saved Me brand. So how are you going to be doing that? What's that going to look like?
Yeah, so the Systems Save Me brand right now is still just my podcast. And again, the transition is going to take time because I'm focusing on the Pimp Your Podcast agency for right now. And again, just giving myself permission. You launching 2 businesses in the same month is not going to happen. So sit down and prioritize. The Systems Saved Me side of business is going to be a workflow shop. So again, you're going to be able to come there and see how you can set up a dope automated client onboarding process using Dubsado, or how you can create an evergreen webinar launch template using ActiveCampaign and Demio, and getting really specific, because that was my biggest hang up about giving people SOPs is I'm not great at being like, here's generally what you need to do. I'm not good with generalizations. I am a detailed person. I don't feel like I help people unless I share all the details. So that was my biggest hang up before. And now that I have quite a few years of experience in a variety of different workflows, I think that it is a quicker turnaround of being able to create the workflows that I have created previously to then mass market them. Again, I'm still going to be focusing on online business owners. Before it was mainly service-based. It's going to be service and digital product. I'm not going to be touching any sort of physical product situation. Sorry, guys. It still fits with who I am and what I'm good at. However, it's definitely a different audience. And I did about 10 market research calls a couple weeks ago with people from my email list and said, hey, I'll give you $10 for Starbucks if you just get on a call with me and talk to me about your life. I had those 10 calls, and then I just sent them all over to Temi and had them transcribed for like uber cheap. I actually haven't looked at them since then because, again, my priority is Pimp Your Podcast. But I did want to make sure that I had those market research calls because amidst the other launch, I didn't want to get on those calls as well. So I do plan to go over those and look at the benefits of, or not the benefits, the struggles that they are having and creating the first workflows for the shop directly for those particular struggles. Everything is matched up to my deep dive marketing strategy. And for the workflow shop, my main marketing strategy is same thing, affiliate program, podcast, because I already have one. And again, bringing order to people's lives. So I check everything against that. I'm really excited for that new journey. And I actually have some really cool collaborations as well with folks who have workflows that I don't have in my arsenal. So for example, I could come up with a YouTube workflow or whatever, but why do that when I can like talk to Jessica Stansbury or Trina Little or whoever else does YouTube and have them just give me what their process is and I create it in our format. And then basically they are 50% affiliates. So whether they send people there or we send people there, they're getting 50% purchase because again, it's their process and they can still sell their process outside of our shop. But what I want our shop to be is like, we are putting the marketing dollars and the promotional dollars toward these workflows. And so you might as well have another place that your process is on. So I have a really cool one too. A friend of mine's husband is really big on podcast editing. And again, I've always had editors. So he's going to be creating for the shop and it's going to be all about how to edit your own podcasts for like the sound quality and all of that. So crazy because I don't like to do business by myself. And so again, everything that I do involves a team or collaborations, affiliates, ambassadors of some kind, because those are the types of businesses that I truly do enjoy.
Yeah, and I'm so pleased that we could pull that out of your deep dive session a few months ago because it sounds, and it's making me feel real good about it because it sounds like it gave you permission to use that and really rely on it. So you're not thinking about all the ways you could now build System Saved Me and Pimp Your Podcast. You're staying grounded in this is me. This is how I naturally, most magnetically show up in the world. Why would I not put more energy into that than all the other things? And I'll just say, the cool part about that is that your deep dive experience, your marketing personality type, that doesn't change based on what business. We're not talking about your business. We're talking about you. And that's why we talk about that first. Then we can talk about the business and your ideal client and all that stuff. So let's talk about you first. So that's given me a lot of energy. Thank you for that. I'm really excited that this episode is going live on the day that it is because it's all happening right now and you're putting this out there. So amidst all of that really good energy, I would love to take you one last question and ask you to look back on when you first started your business and tell us what advice would you give to yourself when you were first starting out? That girl on her couch, hunched over her MacBook, trying to figure all this out, kind of having like that inkling of like, I have to do something. What would you say to her?
The main thing I would tell her is there's no one way to do something. I think that a lot of people get wrapped up in, okay, this is how Amy Porterfield does her podcast. So if I'm going to do a podcast, it has to be exactly how Amy Porterfield does it in all of these different ways. And I was very similar to that when I first started my business. The packages I came up with were very, run of the mill or just like what I saw other people doing. And so I was like, whatever, I'll just do that. And it worked out monetarily. But then about 7 months in, I was like, this isn't fitting me. I want to do it this other way. And not that I would have started out with those packages. I did learn a lot in those 7 months. However, I think that a lot of us get really wrapped up in just wanting to follow somebody else's scribe. I am not a big that kind of person. I'm more of a trailblazer. I want to do something that not everybody else is doing and do it in a way that feels really good and aligns with who I am. So again, with the agency as well as the workflow shop, what's interesting is their business models mirror each other. not obviously agency versus workflows, but I have it to where my traffic sources are Instagram and Pinterest. Those are the only things I'm going to be on because I enjoy both of those platforms. And then both of those are going to point to my podcast because again, I have a podcast for both business. And then literally I'm going to drive people to potentially purchase workflows from the podcast. And then I'm potentially going to have people listening to the podcast who want us to manage their podcast for them. And on both sides, I have affiliate and referral programs. So they literally mirror each other, which makes it a lot easier on my end to, again, say no to a lot of things that maybe everybody else is doing. Maybe, all the other podcast agencies are on Twitter and Facebook, Snapchat and Twitch and all these other things. But I'm saying no to all of that and I'm working with what I'm good with. So yeah, I would tell myself on the couch with a MacBook, just being like, I don't even know what's happening, to not be afraid to experiment outside of the realm and the box that you know.
I love it. Thank you so much for that. Okay. So before we go, could you please tell the listeners where they can find you online? Where do you want them to go right now?
Totally. So easiest places are honestly Instagram. I'm pretty active on Instagram. I like Instagram a lot. So if you are interested in when the workflow shop's going to be coming out and want to keep in the loop on that, then you can go to @SystemsSavedMe on Instagram. And then for the Pimp Your Podcast side, we have Instagram there as well. And you can go to @PimpYourPodcast on Instagram. And so we'll just keep people up to date from both of those places. And that's probably going to be the easiest place.
Perfect. All right. You heard her, girls. Go check her out. Send her some love and then hop into our private Facebook group to hear even more from Jordan over the next few days. Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Marketing in Yoga Pants podcast. Keep the conversation going by visiting marketinginyogapants.com/Facebook, where you'll get to join that private Facebook group I've been talking so much about. There, you'll get to chat with our podcast guests. Yeah, they're in there too. And all of the other brilliant creative business owners. We're connecting, we're meeting our soul sisters, and we're building our businesses, all while in yoga pants. So come hang out with us. Again, visit marketinginyogapants.com/Facebook to get in. And one more thing. If you dig this podcast, would you be awesome and share it with someone? This entire Marketing in Yoga Pants movement is nothing without its community. So please share. And if you're really feeling the love right now, jump into iTunes. You're probably already there if you're listening to this right now. And leave us a rating and review. The more of those we rack up, the more the podcast will be found by ladies like you, and the stronger this community becomes. This episode was edited and produced by the Podcast Engineers. They're pretty great, so go find them at podcastengineers.com. This episode was also brought to you by my online marketing agency, Jam Marketing Group, and you can find us at jammarketinggroup.co. That's all for now. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you back here next week on the Marketing in Yoga Pants podcast. Love ya. Bye.